Hello, and welcome to the ethics class, PHI 105. I wanted to welcome you to the class today and to give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. So I made an outline of the whole class, and I thought I'd just go over it with you so you can anticipate the kinds of things we'll talk about in this class. So the first thing we want to talk about is ethics as situated within the discipline of philosophy. And philosophy is an area of study that's foundational. It deals with the most basic questions we can ask and answer. And it starts with the question of how do we know? That's called epistemology. How do we know? We'll do a little bit of epistemology in this class, but that really is a topic for a logic class. The second main area of philosophy is called metaphysics, and it asks the question, what is real? What is ultimate reality like? Now, we'll have to do a little bit of metaphysics in our class because ethics assumes metaphysics. Ethics has assumed that we've answered the question, what is ultimate reality like, and what is human nature? So what is a human being? And that brings us to ethics, which is the third main area of philosophy. Ethics deals with the question, what is the good life? Or what ought I to do? Do we have moral obligations? And this is a question for human beings. So it assumes we know what a human is. What is the good life for human beings? So we'll talk about that, those three main areas, and we'll talk about your world and life view. That's the first topic for our ethics class. Then we have to define ethics. What is it? And we'll see that ethics has different aspects. So there's something called meta-ethics, which is pretty much the stuff you do before ethics, which is the epistemology and the metaphysics. Then there's normative ethics, which is that part of ethics that is looking for moral norms that are universal. Are there any? So we'll have to find out whether there are. And then we have applied ethics, which is now that we have some moral norms, how do we act upon them? What do we do? And this is where we have all kinds of different controversies and problems and ethical dilemmas that we have to address. So broadly speaking, ethics has an practical application to it. So we'll look at that. We'll look at a definition and these different features of ethics. Well, then we'll get into some details of meta-ethics. What is reason, and how do we know things in philosophy? It's not like science. It's not like we have a lab where we can, do some experiments. So we want knowledge. So reason is the tool for doing philosophy. So we need to know what reason is. And we want knowledge. Particularly, we want knowledge of the good in ethics. Philosophy is concerned with knowing what is real and what is good. So, can we know the good? The good is going to be one of the main concepts of ethics. So, we will talk about the three main concepts of ethics: the good, virtue, and happiness. We'll talk about different ethical theories. For example, we'll talk about teleological ethics, deontological ethics, and consequentialist ethics. That sounds like big stuff right now, but don't worry. We will ease into it. And then we'll look at how these major theories play out in the secular ethical theories of philosophy. Then we want to get into some of the formal features of the good. How could we tell what the good is? What would it look like? How would we know what the good is? Then we'll look at necessary conditions for morality, particularly rational justification for ethics. So we'll find out ethics is about answering why we answered the question, what is the good? So if I say X is the good, we want to provide why we say X is the good. So if I say pleasure is the good, ethics wants to say why. Give us your reasons for saying pleasure is the good. Then we'll talk about the good. And this is where we'll talk about some metaphysics. We'll talk about the metaphysical absolute and the moral absolute. And we'll see, do we have to have an absolute in order to have rational justification for ethics? Then we're going to do some applied ethics. And we'll apply these ideas about the good, virtue, and happiness to all areas of life, all areas of choice and values. So we'll look at thinking and how we think presuppositionally, which we'll learn about really soon. We'll look at integrity. Should people have integrity, and what is integrity? We'll look at work. Is there a work ethic? What does that look like? What is work for? What about authority? Who gets to be an authority, and do we have a moral obligation to submit to authority? Big questions today, right? What about human dignity? Are things like racism and sexism wrong? And if so, why? Fidelity. Should we be faithful in our relationships? What about in marriage? Big topic, right? Truth and justice and social justice, another big topic. Suffering and the good. How should we suffer? Is there an ethics to suffering? Does suffering have a purpose? And how can we connect that to the good? And then we'll talk about practical steps towards ordering our own life towards the good. And then we'll wrap the class up with talking about the good as a source of unity in a very divided world. So can the good be a source of unity in many different contexts? First in ourself, and then in our relationships with other people, in different institutions of culture, in the nation, between nations. So ethics is about all of our choices and values. So we need to see how can we get an ethical way of thinking and apply it to the problems of the world and work together for the good. So you're going to be wondering, what is the good? Don't be tempted to jump ahead and look at the videos on the good. Go in order, because there is a method that we're using in the class. I'll mention it now. It's called rational presuppositional method. And what that means is we are going to deal with more basic questions first. Pretend this is the foundation of a house. The foundation of a house comes before the house, right? So we have to deal with basic questions. And really we need to do epistemology first. Epistemology is the ground upon which you build a house. So think of epistemology as ground and common ground, which will be a means for us to have difficult conversations. So how can we get back to what is more basic? And the method is deal with these basic things first, seek agreement here, and then we can go to less basic things, going up to harder things like abortion and euthanasia. Those are ethical questions, right? But we don't want to start there because we need to get more basic things in place first. So why don't we pause here, and we'll start with talking about the presuppositional method and common ground in the next video. All right, I look forward to joining you in a good conversation this semester. Oh, one more thing. If you hear snoring or breathing in the background, that's Kino. He's my dog, and he's in all my videos. He's over here right now. So he's our mascot. All right, thanks. I'll talk to you soon.